Feeling like a shark in a shrimp tank. Big fish, small pond in the shrimp tank.
Welcome back to another episode of the Shrimp Tank, coming to you virtually from Seattle and the Pacific Northwest. Listen, if you want to learn how to start, grow, or run a successful business, this right here, it's the podcast for you. This is where street smarts and book smarts collide. Hi, I'm Dan Whedon, along with this week's co-host, Aljalyn Sperber. You can find us wherever you get your podcasts. We're all over the place. iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, SoundCloud, Stitcher, YouTube. Find us anywhere. We're ubiquitous. We come to you from about a dozen cities, including Atlanta, Boston, Boca Raton, and soon we're going to be in Knoxville and Columbus and New York City. Today, our guest is Monica Blackwood. She is CEO of West Sound Workforce with offices in Poulsbo and Gig Harbor. Welcome, Monica.
Thank you, Dan and Angelyn.
We are excited. We're going to be talking to Monica about a couple different things, but primarily Long-Term Care Trust Act, which is a huge, huge deal right now in our state. So stay tuned. But I do need to bring on my partner in crime today, Aljalyn Sperber. Welcome, Aljalyn.
Thank you, Dan. It's good to be here. It's hot where I'm at.
It seems like a month since I've seen you, right?
It does seem like it, probably because it was.
And it is hot out. It's like 85 degrees today. It's,
right.
You know, people in Atlanta, when they listen to this, they may say that's like with sweater weather, but here it's kind of warm for us.
Yeah, I am not into it. And you would think that I would be as a Hawaiian,
Yeah.
but no, I am a Pacific Northwest girl through and through.
Hey, you know, I was thinking, you know, I'm a TV watcher.
Mm-hmm.
I love watching TV. Barb and I will do a lot of binge watching, but we watched a show. We just finished a new series on HBO called Mare of Easttown. Have you heard of it?
I haven't heard of that. That's a new one.
So Mare of Easttown stars Kate Winslet of Titanic fame, although, you know, she's about 25 years older than she was when she was in Titanic.
I'll never let go, Jack.
Yeah, so she is brilliant. I just have to say, she is brilliant. The cast is brilliant. It's 7 episodes. If you have HBO, go watch Mare of Easttown. One of the things that caught my attention and made me think of having this conversation with you is that Kate Winslet, I don't know if you knew this, she's Australian, right?
Mm.
And so she's Australian, and I watched one of the makings of, right? And so she was being interviewed, and of course she's speaking normally in her Australian accent. And then I found out that her love interest on the show, he's Australian, and her daughter on the show, she's Australian, but every single one of them spoke in a Eastern Pennsylvania, near Philly dialect. And they said that was
like?
Oh, they were perfect. They said it was the hardest part of the thing, right? Mm-hmm. Now listen, I know that you speak 700 languages or something like that, right?
Less than that, but yes, more than one.
More than one and less than 700. Tell me, you know, when you're dealing with dialect, how hard is it to sound like real, as opposed to somebody who knows the language? How hard is it to sound like you're fluent?
It's hard, especially if you're not native to it. You know, like even as an American, I'm sure I don't sound, you know, like an actual Southern person if I try to do a Southern accent. And then there's entirely different accents, and not necessarily dialects, but accents when you are like in different parts of the South. But in Norway, I can't remember how many dialects there are, but there are many different, and you can definitely tell where you're from based off that dialect. Yeah. So
and well,
it's hard.
Yeah, and they talked about that because they wanted to honor where they were supposed to be from. And you know, I'm not a trained ear on that, but I thought they were brilliant. Jean Smart's in the show. She's from Seattle. Remember her from Designing Women. So, you know, Monica, as we're talking about dialects and lingo and jargon, I got to believe that human resources and staffing have their own dialects and lingo and what I call gibberish or
it is gibberish.
It's
jargon.
What you know, I know West Sound Workforce going to talk about that in a second, but what are some of the topics and the language and the things that are being talked about today when it comes to HR?
Oh my goodness. Talking about dialect and jargon, you know, a lot of people are talking about the ARPA, and they're talking about the FICRA, and they're talking about FEMLA, and they're talking about all these things that are, you know, those federal, state, and local laws and policies that we have to watch. And they have all these funny long names, and they get consolidated into a bunch of letters. And then all of a sudden we start putting sounds to those letters, and they just all kind of bleed together. And it gets pretty crazy. But yeah, there's a lot.
So as we dive in, and I'll get started with the question, Angeline, you jump in right after me. Tell us a little bit about West Sound. I know you've been a guest before on the show, but
Sure.
for those who didn't hear your first visit, tell everybody a little bit about West Sound Workforce.
Happy to. West Sound Workforce, we are a professional staffing agency helping organizations and companies find their next employee, whether that be on a temporary basis, temp to hire, or long-term permanent position. We also do direct hire services. So when organizations are looking for somebody to cover while somebody goes out on a vacation, or they have a new position that they want to fill, they call us, and we're there ready to help them find that next teammate. Likewise, on the employee side, we team with individuals to help them find positions where they're really going to excel at. And that depends on a lot of things. Success is defined in a variety of different ways, depending on their needs and desires at that time. If their need and desires to just simply find a job and earn a paycheck at that moment, we can help them with that. If they are looking to make a career change, pivot is the new word, you know, speaking of lingo, let's pivot. We can help them do that as well. And so we do the full spectrum. We've also been around for now 23 years, believe it or not, here focused specifically in the West Sound area of our beautiful Puget Sound. We are locally owned, independent, women-owned, small business, and have some of those additional credentials that turn into lingo as well.
Monica, one thing I've admired about you all throughout, you know, the pandemic and like lockdown and everything is the resource and support that you've been in terms for like businesses and, you know, all different sizes, and giving them, you know, insights and guidance on how to navigate this as like, you know, their own business, and, you know, working with their team. That's so admirable. And I love the work that you've been doing for the community, for, you know, with KEDA, Kids Up Economic Development Alliance, and the DEI work and the entrepreneurship innovation. You're just, I love how involved you are in our community. Can you share a bit about like what you're hearing, you know, small business owners and even like employees or potential employees in terms of, you know, vaccinations and the guidelines and requirements and everything going back into the office, or just in the workforce in general?
Absolutely. So, you know, as we have all figured out throughout this last 14 months, change happens, and change happens frequently, right? So we're all kind of on our toes, trying to figure things out. And, you know, we take a step here and take a step there, and make sure that the path is relatively safe, right? Lately, as Washington prepares to, you know, fully open up at the end of this month, hopefully, we are looking at having conversations with employers, small business employers, and employees who are very concerned about workplace safety, right? They are going to be venturing back out and trying to get back into their jobs in a way that we thought we had it all before. And so we're now blending that. A lot of the things that we've been hearing, people are asking about, well, employers are asking about whether or not they can mandate vaccines. And so we've been talking about the pros and cons of that, and mandating versus highly encouraging versus not saying anything and leaving it strictly to an employee's initiative to figure things out. We've also been talking about the hot question, the hot interview question is, can I ask people if they have been vaccinated? And while technically at the moment, there's nothing to say that you cannot ask that, we really think that, maybe there's some other ways that you should go about having that conversation. In an interview setting, you can talk about the safety procedures that you are going to be enacting or have enacted within your workplace, so that people have the understanding when they're interviewing for the position about how safe they might be and what their part is in making sure that the environment is safe. And instead of asking them at that time, it's just laid out there about what the expectations are, whether you're mandating it or not, but also all of the other safety procedures, so that people have that understanding. And then if you don't ask that question, then you also can't be asked or accused of making a hiring decision based on whether or not somebody's been vaccinated or not, because that would actually be an ADA potential violation, and you don't want that. So having that simple conversation about what the procedures are that you're doing is a better way to go for that.
It almost feels like you kind of need a passport for this, and maybe like
Right.
a translation guide
Yes.
for all of it. It almost feels overwhelming, even hearing, the different ways that you can go about it. So
Mhm.
what is like one thing, or, like a couple sentences that you can share for small business owners who may like feel really stressed in this situation, to help alleviate some of that or help them feel more comfortable approaching it?
So for your current staff, I would say as we open up, because of some of the regulations that are in the guidelines that the governor signed into law, it's really important that you, in order for employees to walk around their workplace without masks, that you have an attestation that says from them that says, hey, I've been vaccinated. And that then doesn't require you to look at that passport or their vaccine card. It doesn't give you extra information about their health or wellness or anything like that. It's just simply a statement that they have signed. You put that into a different folder, because L&I can come in, and they likely will ask
Oh, wow.
for you to provide proof that you're providing a safe workplace. So put that in a separate folder, ready when folks come knocking. So yeah.
So Monica, that brings up a question. I got to think it's a conundrum for employers. I've been vaccinated twice. I'm all for it, but I also know that there's about a third of people who have because at this point now in our state, if you want a vaccine, you've had it. You've at least had everybody. There's still a number of people, and as many as maybe 30%, who just for whatever reason say they don't want to do it. What kind of a conundrum is that for an employer? And let's even take it to one that has people coming into their place, whether they're a grocery store, a restaurant, a hotel, whatever that is. I see the word highly encouraged. I don't know exactly what that means. What kind of help would you, and maybe this is a repeat of what Al Jolin asked, but what kind of help would you give when you have people who are definitely not going to get it, who you're dealing with a retail or hospitality environment, or maybe even just an office environment? What kind of help can you give there?
Well, so first of all, make sure when you're asking your employees, you just simply ask the one question: are you vaccinated or not? Don't ask anything else. Don't go into the reasons why, anything like that, because again, those could be ADA violations or EEOC violations. So just stick with that one question. If they are vaccinated, have them fill out that attestation form, right? And have that filed. As far as your customers go, people coming into the office, into the retail space or whatnot, and this goes for even job sites like construction and so forth, those fall into still needing to mask up and stay safe with social distancing and whatnot. As far as that goes, make sure as a company, you've had the conversation about how you're going to handle a situation where somebody that comes into your place of business maybe creates a little bit of controversy or some uncomfortable situations, because what you need to do is make sure that that policy is clear and that your staff understand what it is. And then you need to make sure that you are following that and that you are backing up your employees, because if you don't, then all of a sudden, not only is it potentially a health safety risk because of the coronavirus, but you're also starting to come up potentially on a situation where there's workplace bullying, because workplace bullying also does not have to be inside employees only. It can also be from outside factors, including customers and so forth. So you want to make sure that you're following up on your procedures, you're making sure that your employees are following your procedures, and that you're backing them up to base off of what you said you were going to do and how you were going to handle those situations. And that'll be the most clear way for you to have the opportunity to kind of settle things out, and might mean that you have to ask somebody to leave, depending.
Yeah. Well, we have to leave, but we're coming back. We're gonna take a short break to hear from today's Spotlight sponsor. And when we come back with Monica Blackwood from West Sound Workforce, we're actually going to postpone Hot or Not, because there is a incredibly hot topic, even more than masks and vaccines, I think, and it's the Long-Term Care Trust Act. We're going to talk about that when we come back. So don't walk away. We'll be right back with more of the Shrimp Tank.
Ladybox, an organic women's health subscription box focusing on periods, pregnancy, postpartum, perimenopause, and menopause. With boxes for first periods all the way through menopause, we deliver care and comfort during cycles of change and celebrate them too. With Ladybox, you have one less thing to worry about during your cycle, because you've got essentials, snacks, and items for comfort to help you feel empowered and cared for. To learn more about Ladybox, visit www.joinladybox.com. Use code MyLadybox to save 10% off your first purchase.
Welcome back to the Shrimp Tank, where we interview the best and brightest CEOs and business thought leaders in the greater Puget Sound area and beyond. I'm Helgelyn Sperber. Our guest today, Monica Blackwood with West Sound Workforce. For our next segment, which is not Hot or Not, we'll be talking about the Long-Term Care Act here.
Well, and it could be hot or not, depending on whose point of view you're looking at it from, right, Monica?
Very true.
So listen, I think a lot of the folks listening are finally getting wind. If they haven't by now, it's really late in the game, because this bill that passed in 2019 takes effect January 1, 2022. There's some deadlines coming up. Bottom line, just to introduce it a little bit, every W-2 employee, and that includes our CEOs who are W-2s, and the presidents of companies, everybody who's got a W-2 is going to have a 58 cents per $100 of income tax levied on them starting in January. It's going to be paid through the Employment Securities Department by the employer. That's an important part of this. The employer can't pay it. It's not an employer tax, but they are the collector of it. And I guarantee you, HR departments, if they haven't started hearing about why are you going to be taking money out, they're going to be soon. We don't have time to go through the whole bunch of challenges of what is in or not in the Tax Act. What I'd like to do, though, Monica, is start with what should HR professionals and those who are taking on the role of HR, and that could be the owner, that could be anybody in the people who are identifying as HR. What do they on June 2nd? What do they need to know, and what do they need to tell their employees?
Well, the first thing they need to know is a website, and it's wacaresfund.wa.gov. And that is the official website for everything that is related to this act, and what the employers need to know and do, and how they can forward the information and get employees the information they need in order to be aware of what's happening come the turn of the year.
And Monica, really quickly, I'm going to have you
Yeah.
repeat that because we're going to have,
Yeah.
when this gets all edited out, we're going to have it on the YouTube and we'll have it scrolled underneath. Give that one more
Sure.
time.
It's WA, W-A, caresfund.wa.gov.
Okay.
So on this,
No, please
on
go
this
ahead.
there is an employer toolkit that currently looks a little skinny, but I think those in employment security are working on filling it out. But there is a notice, a model notice to be used for employers to send out to their employees, because second to knowing about this website, I want employers to know that they should be educating their employees on this. The timetable that the state had given really doesn't have education to employees happening until late 2023 or 2024. But
After they've been paying 58 cents per $100 for a couple of
Yes.
years, right?
exactly. And where are they going to go when they look at their paycheck come January and be like, what is this
Yeah.
coming out of my paycheck? They're going to go straight to you, HR, payroll, and leadership, and ask what the heck is going on. So be educating now. And so talk to your employees, tell them that this is coming up. Encourage them to go and get some education, talk with some insurance agents or financial planners and so forth to take a look at what their options are that are on the market potentially. Because right now is the time to opt out. And so far as the way that the law is written, there is no other opt-out period in the future. That may change, but for now, the way the law is written, you can only opt out now.
And Aljalyn, I hope you don't mind me just butting in really quickly. I want to piggyback on that because I want to hear from you as well on this. It's important to note what you just said, Monica. As of right now, this is the opt-out period. The deadline, well, they start opting out October 1, but the deadline to have an individual long-term care policy is November 1 of this year. And
Correct.
and I don't want people to think you can go into your insurance broker or your financial advisor and buy car insurance. This is not car insurance. This takes, anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks to go through. It's like buying life insurance. And so that is you have to start acting on it now. And the only other thing I want to bring up, and then I'd like Aljalyn to come on and discuss this too, is while the state has done some things and made some adjustments, the insurance market is as well. The insurance market is, and believe it or not, this might seem like a boon opportunity for them. Many are retreating and retreating quickly because they're very concerned about what they call adverse selection, where people are going to they're going to take out a policy, opt out, and then cancel. Well, insurance companies, that's no bueno for them. I hope my dialect was good there. There was no bueno for them. And so I have seen insurance companies, move their minimum age from as low as 18 years old to 40. So if you're a youngster like Aljalyn, you can't use that company anymore. It's not available. Some of the other companies are putting moratoriums until after 2022 starts. So my message is don't wait. Don't hold off. If you at least want to get options to make an educated decision, it's time. Aljalyn, I know that you may have some questions for Monica as well.
Yeah, so the only reason I would probably know about the long-term care or any kind of long-term care is because I used to work for a retirement community. And that was like the big topic of like making sure you take care of your future and that you don't end up in some random nursing bed when you're old and you like can't really make decisions for yourself. So I'm curious as like, somebody that has no idea how this is relevant to them right now, why would they even want to hear about it? And how would you encourage employers and leaders to make to work on the messaging to make it relevant for employees that are younger than 40 and really can't see the big picture of why they even need to think about it and consider it.
So specifically answering the question about those who might be around the 40-year-old range rather than the 70 or 80-year-old range, it's a beautiful day out in the Pacific Northwest. And I'm sure that it was beautiful all weekend. And I'm sure there were a bunch of people out in boats and on their jet skis and going tubing and so forth. And we know in the Northwest that as fun as that is, it can turn dangerous really quick. And there could be an accident where somebody gets severely injured, right? And brain trauma is a huge issue and often comes along with water accidents and so forth. And brain trauma can lead to not being able to do 3, according to the state's law, 3 of those active daily functions that would then qualify you to be able to get this benefit, right? In the future when they're ready to dole out the benefit. So as you're riding on your inner tube being towed around by the boat, there's a risk there. And you want to make sure that your active lifestyle is covered or covering you in case a tragedy happens, right? And all of a sudden you need more care than you were fully anticipating. And it's real. It does happen. And we have stories.
And Monica, to that point, the long-term care, and I know they call it the CARES Act now,
right,
doesn't extend benefits for the first 3 years.
Correct.
It's not till 2020 because they're trying to fund it, and there's nothing available for the first 3 years. And that's a problem. I'd like to tackle Aljalyn's question really briefly as well.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. Let's just say you're in your mid 30s, early to mid 30s, and maybe you're making 6 figures. I did the math. You're likely to pay upwards of $20,000 to $25,000 in your working career to a tax that if you leave the state to retire, to go do some, if you leave the state, you forfeit every penny of that. It's gone. You don't get it. That's one. The other thing is, and I think this is important. We talked about the activities of daily living. The way the verbiage is in the legislation, when it comes to cognitive impairment, long-term care insurance says or as one of them. You can have this, or cognitive impairment. In the legislation, it says and, which reads to me that says you have to have this, and cognitive impairment. When my dad went into assisted living for cancer, he did not have cognitive impairment. I would have expected them to say, no, you don't have any coverage. So those are things, unfortunately, we're having conversations with 35-year-olds, but the other thing, Aljalyn, way cheaper, way cheaper. I've started seeing the incredible increase at about 55 years old. So if you're in your early 50s, it's now time. If you're in your 40s or below, this is a great time because part of your financial planning, this is a very inexpensive time to do it.
Another aspect to it about looking at it now is that, if for some reason you're in your younger years and for some reason you have to apply for a benefit through the state for their long-term care, and the max lifetime currently stated is 36,500, which is roughly 6 months of care or so. And so after that, you've maxed out. You're not going to get any more. But say you went through a year's worth of recovery and you came to a place where you could enter back into the job market, you're then contributing back to this tax. You will never be able to access it again, but you keep contributing for the next 20, 30 years that you're involved in the workforce. So, yeah. it keeps going.
Yeah, it keeps going, and so does this show. We're gonna have to take our break. We're not gonna let you off the hook with plead the fifth, but I'm going to encourage everybody. If you are an employer in this state, wherever you are, if you're listening in Spokane, if you're listening in Pasco, if you're listening in Paulsbo, West Sound Workforce is a great resource. Monica gave you the website to go to, but I know, please reach out to Monica and her team
Yes.
because they can help you with this. And that goes, I think, really for employees too, because the
Yes.
employees are the ones who are actually significantly impacted by this. But now's the time to take our short break to hear from our sponsors. And when we come back with Monica Blackwood of West Sound Workforce for our famous Plead the Fifth section of the show, I'm going to ask Monica what it's like to live with a crazed sports coach. Don't walk
my.
away. We'll be right back with more of the Shrimp Tank.
Plead the Fifth is brought to you by our corporate sponsors: Ideal Life 360, Cornerstone Financial Strategies, First Underwriters Insurance, Kitsap Sun Newspaper. Please visit our website at www.shrimptankpodcast.com/Seattle to learn more about these terrific companies. Now back to the show.
Welcome back to the Shrimp Tank, where we interview the best and brightest CEOs and business thought leaders in the Great Puget Sound area and beyond. I'm co-host Aljalyn Sperber. Our guest today is Monica Blackwood with West Sound Workforce. For our next segment, Plead the Fifth.
And Monica, you know that we're going to pepper you with questions about business, about life, maybe a little bit about sports and being a Husky. We'll maybe get into that, but you have to plead the fifth once, and after that, we'll really turn up the heat. But I'm going to start off with this. I've known your husband Clay longer than I've known you. I met Clay first. He's a great guy, but to say he's an obsessed sports coach might not even do it justice. And now you live with sports crazed children. You love sports yourself, but I got to believe it's crazy town in the Blackwood house. So let me ask you this. Plead the fifth, Monica Blackwood. What is the one thing that drives you crazy, drives you up the wall living with your sports nut husband who coaches like 17 sports at the same time?
That's actually a really easy question. The thing that drives me up a wall is when he swears that he's had a conversation with me, and actually he's had a conversation with his fellow coach. And I sit there and say, okay, who were you really having this conversation with? Oh, yeah, I guess you weren't there. Right. Mm-hmm.
That's awesome.
Actually, that sounds like something I do with my own partner too sometimes. So I can relate with him. Okay. I have more, workforce related questions for you. And I'm sure lots of people out here, especially, since we have our big Olympic college in the Kitsap Peninsula. Yeah. Can you build a full-time career with only a 2-year degree?
Absolutely. Oh my goodness. Yes, you can. You can build a full career, very worthwhile and fulfilling career with a certificate from OC. It might be a 2-quarter certificate. There are so many positions available for individuals who may not have that 4-year degree kind of drive or track, or even a 2-year degree. So absolutely go for it. Go for what works for you. And there are opportunities abound.
Monica, plead the fifth, true or false? Washington Crew, men and women, Washington Crew is the most successful and the most important athletic program in the history of the University of Washington.
In my completely unbiased opinion, absolutely true.
Why is your opinion somewhat tainted, maybe biased?
I was fortunate growing up here on the water that I sailed all growing up and in high school and so forth with my dad. And then when I decided to go to the University of Washington, lo and behold, there's all these signs up saying, hey, UW crew, men's and women's, we're looking for people. And it's a walk-on sport there. And so I walked on, transferred my knowledge. That's kind of a workforce skill set, transfer your knowledge, and applied the sailing information and background that I had to being a successful coxswain back in the day. And yeah, it was
What
great.
is a coxswain?
So a coxswain, in simple terms, is kind of like the coach on the boat. You're sitting there, you're either the fifth person or the ninth person on the boat. You have steering capabilities. You're able to coach the team or the rowers, making sure that they're all staying in cadence so that you can maximize the efficiency and the speeds. You're doing race strategy and planning at the same time.
Did you get a cool megaphone? Did you actually have one of those megaphones that you got to bark out orders?
So I actually do have one of those megaphones. Did not come from there. It came from my grandfather, who was also a coxswain on the
Wow.
men's team. And
So cool.
I used that growing up as, to root for Husky football. And then when I was a coxswain, we had microphones and, plugged them in and had the speakers on the boat. So yeah.
I love that. Okay, next plead the fifth. You're at a dinner party and you're sitting next to somebody you don't know. What do you say to them? What's the first thing you say?
Well, as of recently, it's been, hey, are you okay with my mask off? I'm back. You. And that happened this weekend at a softball tournament with my kids. So we've all decided that is like the new icebreaker question.
Yeah, that's so funny.
That's great. So I got to plead the fifth that I've been asking everybody. We're gonna kind of do a compilation at the end of the year. So Monica, you're not. I'm taking you away from being the boss over at West Sound Workforce, but you have to start a new business, and it's got to be based on a hobby. What business would you start today based on one of your hobbies, and why?
Kid transportation services.
That's your hobby?
Whoa, that's a hobby? Oh my gosh.
Well, it feels like it because it's my kids' hobbies. And so it's been hard getting people from one place to another, either for school or for sports or whatever, piano, what other activities. And so I just think there's a huge opportunity for people. I'm sure that there is quite a bit of logistics and legal and insurance issues that go along with that. But yeah, I think kid transportation would be really helpful so that I can do hobbies.
There you go.
Okay. All right. In terms of like workforce, again, what is the biggest mistake an employer can do in the hiring process, especially like, nowadays with the new normal?
Yeah. One of the biggest mistakes, I think, actually it's kind of twofold, is not moving fast enough and not communicating. Right now, employees have the ability to pick and choose, and they have quite a few options. And as people come back into the workforce, that's still going to remain. And it's critical that employers stay in touch in a timely fashion with those that they are interviewing and have in their applicant pipeline. And it is crucial to make decisions quickly as to whether or not they're advancing to the next round of whatever your hiring process is, although it should be pretty short, or making a job offer and so forth.
So
Monica,
quick follow-up on that.
Sure, go ahead.
If you're a coxswain to these employers and you want them to pivot, or like go faster, what would that call out be if you're the coxswain?
Power 20.
Power 20. All right, power 20.
Or even
employers.
a power 10.
I like that. I think you should trademark that. I love that. It's a great question. So Monica, tell us what do you see in your crystal ball as the future of the hybrid office? And in addition to that, as we move forward, because the pivot's been made, and I think there's a lot of offices that are going to continue in some form to do that. What are the things that the business owners are overlooking? Because there are some challenges with having that hybrid office. If that's going to continue, what are a few key points that employers really need to make sure they've got taken care of?
So really important to understand is that on the whole, most individuals prefer a hybrid work environment than they do strictly work from home or strictly in the office. Also important to understand is that 58% of the jobs that are out there across industries, across the nation, actually cannot be done from a remote place. So you're talking about less than half, 40% of the jobs out there can be done remotely. So it's critical that businesses maintain their physical space and their presence. I think if you have the opportunity to create a hybrid situation, and there are different ways to do that with respect to work schedules and so forth, it's important to remain or to keep a place where everybody can gather, because that's the reason why they want to still come in somewhere. They want to be able to have those accidental, really intriguing connection conversations at the water cooler. They want to be able to hear the same message from leadership at the same time, and have discussions about what's happening in the company. So I think those are really important aspects.
What are you binge watching right now?
I actually have not been able to binge watch in quite some time. So it's kind of sad. So I would
be driving you're doing?
With all the yes, yes, pretty much. I was able to rewatch an old classic movie a couple weeks ago that my husband enjoys, and so we sat on the couch and had a moment to do that. But mostly I am watching live, real time softball, baseball, and parkour.
You can watch parkour live? That's amazing.
Well, at my kids' parkour classes, I certainly can.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah, and we've recently been finding out about some, I don't know what they're actually called, competitions or something. I don't know, but I've recently been stumbling across some of those. So we'll see if Taylor's interested in that.
That's cool.
So amazingly, we've come to the end of the time. I know that Aljalyn is going to check with you on contact information, but I want to thank you for being here today and talking about some really important topics.
Thank you. It's been great to chat with both of you and connect again, and really happy that I've been able to provide some information and resources to the CEOs and business leaders out there.
Yes, thank you so much for being on the Shrimp Tank today, Monica. For our listeners who do want to get in touch with you or learn more about West Sound Workforce, how can they get that information?
Absolutely. Our website is westsoundworkforce.com. Pretty simple. Our phone number 253-853-3633. And you can follow us on a multitude of social media channels: Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. I'm missing one. We have another one. I don't
find it on the website.
Lots of them. Yes.
All right. Well, thank you so much. So make sure you check out all the replays on shrimptankpodcast.com/Seattle and wherever you get your podcasts. That can be iHeart, Spotify. We're all over the place. Please follow us on our show's social media pages on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram.
And Aljalyn, thanks for being my co-host today. I will see you next month. James Alberson is going to be with me next week, and Our guest on June 9th is going to be Shelley Golden with Shelley Golden Style. And you both will probably like to hear that we're probably going to be doing a little Zoom makeover. She's going to tell James and I how to look better on videos. So can't wait to have Shelley Golden with Shelley Golden Style on June 9th in the tank. But now in the meantime, please be safe, be well, be prosperous, because until next week, the shrimp is back in the tank. So long.
I've been feeling like a shark in a shrimp tank. Big fish, small pond.